For 3,000 years, one man's voyage home has haunted storytellers. Now Christopher Nolan has brought it to the screen, and it's unlike anything you've seen before. This is the story of Odysseus, and this is how Nolan tells it. For 10 years the Greek army has laid siege to Troy, and for 10 years the city's walls have not fallen. It's Odysseus who finally breaks the stalemate, not with strength, but with deception. He proposes a massive wooden horse, hollow enough to hide dozens of soldiers, left at the gates as if the Greeks have finally given up and gone home. The Trojans take the bait. They drag the horse inside their own walls, unaware that they're carrying their enemy into the heart of the city. That night, while Troy sleeps, the soldiers climb out. The gates open, the fires begin. By morning, 10 years of war end in a single devastating night, and Troy is gone. For Odysseus, this is meant to be the end of the story. Instead, it's only the beginning of a much longer one. The journey home to his wife Penelope and his son Telemachus, waiting for him on the island of Ithaca. What should have taken a matter of a week stretches into 10 years. Because in Nolan's Odyssey, this isn't simply a story about a man finding his way home. It's a story about how little control any of us have over our own fate. Zendaya's Athena watches over Odysseus throughout the journey, guiding him when she can. But her protection comes with a price, and it isn't absolute. Chief among Odysseus' enemies is Poseidon, god of the sea, whose fury becomes personal once Odysseus blinds his son, the Cyclops Polyphemus. From that moment on, every wave, every current, every storm across the Mediterranean carries the weight of Poseidon's anger, and Athena's protection can only go so far against that. Odysseus is, by every account, the cleverest man in the Greek army, but cleverness means nothing against the will of a god who has already decided his fate. The first true test comes on the island of the Cyclops, where Odysseus and his crew find themselves trapped in the cave of Polyphemus, a giant with a single eye and an appetite for human flesh. Escape seems impossible until Odysseus turns to the one weapon that he has left, his mind. He gets the giant drunk, blinds him while he sleeps, and slips his men out beneath the bellies of Polyphemus' own sheep. It should be a clean escape, but this is where Nolan's film turns a moment of triumph into a moment of consequence. Because what Odysseus does next, in the heat of victory, sets a curse in motion that will follow him for the rest of the voyage. Further along the coast wait the sirens, whose voices promise sailors everything they've ever wanted, and lure them to their deaths on the rocks below. Nolan's version of this scene has become one of the most talked about sequences in the film, turning a moment that's often played as fantasy into something genuinely unsettling. On the island of Alea, the sorceress Circe transforms half of Odysseus' remaining crew into swine. What begins as a trap becomes something more complicated, an alliance neither Odysseus nor Circe expected, and one that changes the direction of the entire journey. There's also a passage no living man should have to make, a descent into the underworld, where Odysseus seeks out the blind prophet Tiresias for guidance on what's still ahead. It's one of the darkest, quietest stretches of the film, a reminder that this was never really an adventure story. It's a survival story, and survival has a cost. And then there's Calypso, played by Charlize Theron, a goddess who keeps Odysseus on her island not for months, but for years. This isn't a monster to defeat or a trap to escape. It's something harder, a version of comfort and safety that stands directly in the way of everything Odysseus says he wants. The longer he stays, the more the film asks a quiet question underneath all the spectacle. How much of this journey is really about getting back to Penelope? And how much of it is about a man who no longer knows how to stop moving? Before any of that, though, there's a moment where the journey almost ends early, and in the cruelest way possible. The wind god Ilus gives Odysseus a bag containing every storm wind in the world, sealed shut, so that only a gentle breeze carries his ships home. Ithaca is in sight. And then his own crew, convinced the bag is hiding stolen treasure, opens it while Odysseus sleeps. The winds explode outward and blow the fleet all the way back to where they started. It's one of the cruelest ironies in the entire story. Odysseus does everything right and loses everything anyway because of the people closest to him. Not long after, the ships land among the Lastrygonians, a race of cannibal giants who don't bother with tricks or traps. They simply attack. Most of Odysseus' fleet is destroyed in the harbor before the men even understand what's happening. Only Odysseus' own ship escapes intact, It's the moment the journey stops being an adventure with occasional casualties and becomes something closer to a massacre. By the time Odysseus is done with these encounters, his fleet of 12 ships has been reduced to nothing. Storms, monsters, and his own men's mistakes have cost him crew after crew, until Odysseus is the only one left to finish a journey. He started with hundreds of men beside him. When Odysseus finally reaches Ithaca, after 10 years, there's no triumphant homecoming waiting for him. His palace has been overrun by suitors, men who've spent years pressuring his wife Penelope, played by Anne Hathaway, to give him up for dead and remarry. Robert Pattinson plays Antinous, the most ruthless of them, a man who has effectively been ruling Ithaca in Odysseus' absence, and has no intention of giving that power back. Meanwhile, his son Telemachus, played by Tom Holland, isn't the boy Odysseus left behind. He's grown up in the shadow of his father's legend, fighting his own battles to protect what's left of his family's name. Odysseus doesn't reveal himself right away. He returns in disguise, watching, waiting, gathering what he needs before making his move. Penelope, for her part, hasn't simply been waiting passively. She's held off the suitors for years, with her own quiet strategy, promising to choose a husband once she finishes a piece of weaving she secretly unravels every night. The moment everything changes is a contest. Whoever can string Odysseus' old hunting bow and shoot an arrow through a row of axe heads will win Penelope's hand. One by one, the suitors fail. The bow is simply too strong for any of them to draw. Then the disguised beggar steps forward and asks for a turn. What happens next is the moment the film has been building toward for 2 hours. The string, the axes, the arrow, and the mask coming off. The fight to reclaim his home that follows becomes one of the most intense sequences in the entire film. So what makes this version of the Odyssey different from every other adaptation that's come before it? Nolan built his script around 2 specific references. Emily Wilson's 2017 translation of the poem, known for stripping away centuries of romanticized language to get closer to what the original text actually says, and the work of Ray Harryhausen, the stop-motion effects legend behind films like Jason and the Argonauts. That combination gives Nolan's Odyssey a strange, effective balance. Monsters and gods that feel tactile and real, in service of a story that's less interested in spectacle for its own sake, and more interested in what it costs a person to survive 10 years of loss. Critics reviewing the film have pointed to exactly that underneath the scale and the IMAX cinematography, this is a story about what human beings owe each other. Odysseus' journey has survived for 3,000 years because it asks a question that never really goes away. When you finally make it home, are you still the person who left? Nolan's answer might be the most unsettling part of the whole film.